Good morning, I'm Lauren Rowe. Coming up this morning on Flashpoint.
I've come here to Cairo to seek a new beginning between the United States and Muslims around the world.
The president calls for unity between the U.S. and the Muslim world. Many are praising his plea for peace, but others say a broken bridge cannot be mended so easily. With chaos in Iran and political unrest in Israel, what are the ramifications here at home? Today on Flashpoint, local experts join me to discuss the impact. It's Sunday, June 21st. Let's get the conversation started. We have a big show planned for you this morning. A lot of the time, we see things happening overseas. We see the video, you see the headlines, you might read about it in the paper, but what we don't realize sometimes is those incidents, they do affect local populations right here in Central Florida, and that is the focus on Flashpoint today. So joining me in our panel discussion is Rachid. He graduated from the University of South Florida, majored in international relations, has a bachelor's degree from the College of Arts and Sciences. He served as a public relations officer for the Muslim Students Association of USF, elected to the USF Senate. He is now the executive director of CARE. In 2007, he joined CARE Tampa as the full-time civil rights coordinator. He served for 2 years, recently appointed as the executive director in January of 2009, based in Tampa. Mr. Killich, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Jim Shipley is the founding member of the Israel Task Force, a committee formed in the 1960s to provide factual information to the media on Israel. He's still doing it today.
Correct. Still doing it today.
Served on the Community Relations Committee of the Jewish Federation of Greater Orlando. He's traveled to Israel more than 30 times. His eldest son was in the Israeli army, and his daughter currently lives in Jerusalem with her three children. He writes a syndicated column appearing in a number of weekly Jewish newspapers. They own a marketing company, he and his wife, called Trading Wise. Reverend Ken Garrison is the pastor of Fellowship Church. He's been there since 1976. He formed the SEMAC.
That's close.
Close. The SEMAC Institute for Biblical Studies. He has an undergraduate degree in physics and mathematics from Western Kentucky. He's got a master's in nuclear engineering. I don't know how you got to where you are today. It's probably a whole other show. But he's also got a master's of theology from Luther Rice Seminary. He served in the U.S. Navy and worked in the nuclear power industry. And also joining us from CARE today, a volunteer in that organization, Rachid. All right, thank you all very much for being here. Let's begin with the big headlines from this week. We have violence in Iran. People killed in protest over the presidential election. Protesters are saying that it was rigged. Thousands of people protested on the day that this was actually taped, on Thursday. They filled the streets of Tehran. Opposition leader Mir Hossein Mousavi is mourning the demonstrators killed. Human rights groups say that about 32 people have been killed so far. Iran's supreme leader invited all candidates to meet with the country's main electoral authority. That was the latest as of Thursday at the taping of this show. I'm going to just open it up to whoever wants to begin. It is scary stuff going on in Iran. How concerned are all of the people sitting here at this table today?
I don't know that I'm as concerned as I am hopeful. Revolutions, changes in government, things like that, have to go from the bottom up. What we saw during the past 8 years in this country, Lauren, is that they try to push it from the top down, and obviously that doesn't work. You know, why do things fail? Because they don't work. Communism failed because it didn't work. What I think we see happening now in Iran is finally the people are beginning to wake up to the fact that they are entitled to a better way. Let me just give 2 points and then I'll turn it over. Number one, 50% of the people in Iran are under 35 years of age. The unemployment rate is close to 25%. So all of the factors are there to make change. We tend
to you know, bulk everybody together in the Middle East, but it is such a much more diverse and complicated situation. You all, when you work within the Central Florida community, what are your top priorities, especially given what we see on the news and how it might affect the people here who live here?
Right. Well, the concern, obviously, in Iran right now, what it's going through is a concern for the international community and for many Iranians who live here. Our concern, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is the concern for the American Muslim community and how a lot of the way the U.S. administration, for example, the current administration, Barack Obama, or any administration for that matter, deals with the Muslim world, primarily the Middle East and South Asia. What happens with our policy there sometimes affects what happens to Muslims here. There may be a backlash based on political fear, or, you know, we see hate crimes, hate incidents against the American Muslim community, which is a concern to us. And that's what we focus on the Council on American Islamic Relations. We try to bring understanding. We try to defend the rights of American Muslims who have been wronged based on things that may be happening in other parts of the world.
And Reverend Garrison, you know, we'll be showing a couple of pieces of the speech from the president's speech a couple of weeks ago. But your feeling is, as you watched the president's speech and as you spoke to, did you speak to your congregation at all about it, or how much of it is part of what you preach to the people within your community?
In our congregation, we're concerned, we're a biblical-oriented congregation, and so very, very strong on the prospect of prophecy fulfillment, looking to redemption in a general sense. And if I can't go too far afield here, I look at the human community as a closed thermodynamic system that if there's going to be a change, it has to come from the outside. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking for godly intervention. Now, I'm a pastor of the church. From a secular view, it probably maybe doesn't make much sense, but we're looking for a godly intervention into the human community. And so the events in the Middle East, obviously, we see that hope being encouraged all the time. Now, Mr. Obama is changing the policy. Much of that fulfillment, obviously, we see with the people of Israel in the land of Israel. To us, that's a great fulfillment. Obviously, not everybody sees it in those eyes, but that's our eyes. And so I believe personally that Mr. Obama is, in his own personal life, he has somehow bridged the gap between early life as a Muslim. Now he's presumably a Christian. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I think he personally feels that he has bridged that gap, and he believes that he can bridge that gap on an international scale also.
Do you feel he can bridge the gap here?
No. I don't think he can do it either here or on an international scale, but I believe that's what he sees himself doing.
Is it necessary to bridge a gap, though? I guess that's a question. I mean, do we have to build a bridge, or can people live in their own faith and their own communities without violence or hatred?
First of all, I would like to thank Channel 6 for giving us this fair point of view, because usually the media is very one-sided, and today we see that we bring different side into the table. So, yes, definitely, what's happening in Iran definitely affects us. Like with the globalization, we live in a small global village. What happened here will affect us. Like the president say, just take the instance of the flu, of the swine flu. One incident can affect worldwide. Similarly, the economic impact, what's happening there, there is a lot of oil involved there, so that influence the economy here and worldwide. I'm very optimistic about the whole situation, and it is a stepping ground. It is a breaking ground and a historic speech in Cairo. That was the need to reach out, and that was the need to reevaluate the U.S. foreign policy, which was always biased towards the Muslim world.
But I'm sitting at a table with very learned people that are experts in this field. But what do the average people on the street believe and feel, and how does it affect the life that we live? We're going to talk about that when we come back here on Flashpoint, talking about the Middle East and relations there and how it affects Central Florida. We'll be right back.
I'm Scott Rates in downtown Orlando. I've been speaking with people all morning and getting their opinion on the president's speech, what they told me, and why it may surprise you coming up next. You're watching Flashpoint on Local 6.
I'm a Christian, but my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn and at the fall of dusk.
I think everybody can agree it was a bold speech. Whether you agree with what he had to say or not, no president certainly has gone up in front of what is primarily a Christian nation and actually made a point of the fact that he was actually part of a Muslim community. And there has been backlash. And there certainly have been some people in the community here locally that had positive and negative things to say. We sent Scott Rates out to find out what the reaction was.
Yeah, Lauren, I did speak with many people on the streets of Orlando this morning who tell me that they are skeptical of the president's speech, like you mentioned. However, there are others who say that we need to give the president's plan time to work.
But I think it's definitely a good idea to at least attempt to help them to bring about peace in that region.
We appreciate his efforts, but ultimately, I don't think it's going to work.
There's certainly disagreements in downtown Orlando this morning. The debate, can the Obama administration bring peace to the Middle East?
I think it's going to get better.
And the president hopes so too. That's why he traveled to Cairo, Egypt, where he spoke to millions of Muslims in that region, telling them that peace is possible.
I've come here to Cairo to seek a new beginning.
But
Is peace possible in the Middle East?
not everyone is so optimistic.
At this point, sadly, I don't believe so.
Bill Sutton says while it's a good effort on the president's behalf, he still believes it's a lost cause.
Well, I have a lot of family that's in the military and the Marines.
Jessica Knight comes from a military family, and like many Americans, she says she has family fighting in Iraq.
And if they're not over there, then 9/11 could happen all over again.
Terrorism is still on the minds of many, including the president.
We would gladly bring every single one of our troops home if we could be confident that there were not violent extremists determined to kill as many Americans as they possibly can.
But Bill believes that no matter what we do, the Middle East will always be a war-torn region.
It's probably something in the long term that's simply not going to work out.
So as you can see, the president has a lot of convincing to do, and with the most recent events in Iran, he's certainly got his work cut out for him. Lauren, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Take a look at a web poll from clickorlando.com. Are tensions between the U.S. and the Muslim world easing? No, 66%. Yes, 5%. Obviously, some undecideds in there. Let me start with you, Mr. Shipley. What do you think about the fact that people truly don't believe that Barack Obama can make a difference here, that it will always be a war-torn region? And to go even further on that, are we ever going to get past, not that we should, but are we ever going to get past the feeling that to a lot of people, Islam equals terrorism?
Well, the problem is we live in a soundbite generation. Today, you've got everything from all the cable channels, the major networks, and this thing called blogging, where just by going online, you suddenly have instant credibility, so that every wacko in the world who can type can go in there and become an overnight genius. I think what our problem is that nobody can get off that dime of the differences. To begin with, to say that Islam equals terror is ridiculous, because in the Quran, you can take the Bible and read it any way you want to. In our Torah, it says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But it also says, thou shalt not murder. So you can, based on the interpretations and the commentaries, I think, in every religion, run much farther than the books from which they come. You can lean it either way. But let's face it, how many, Ramsey, how many Muslims in the world?
1.5 billion.
I would say,
The
yeah,
fastest growing
closer.
religion in the world.
1.5.
I would say it's a third of the world population.
Okay,
I mean, that's the way I would
fine.
say, yeah.
So if 3% of them are terrorists, that's still a lot of people, but it's only 3% of the Muslim population.
And it's important to know that they don't speak for Islam or Muslims.
That is true.
A lot of the times they use Islam as a tool for their political gains. Another thing to remember, if we saw when we were watching Obama's speech, he focused on extremism. Extremism is a problem not only encountered in the Muslim world, but in general, you're going to find this in every society where you go, where people have extreme ideologies or they'll carry out extreme measures to gain
We just
something.
saw a white supremacist gun down someone in the
Exactly.
Holocaust Museum.
Exactly.
Also-
And I think that's the focus he was trying to bridge between the Muslim world and for the world in general. I think this was just not only